So far we've looked at distance time graphs. Now what I want to do is actually look at speed time graphs. So speed time graph is when we have on the y our speed, and it can be kilometers per hour or meters per second, versus time. And the question we have here says find the slope of the following graph. So let's do that. So I know that slope is equal to the rise divided by the run. And in this case here, the rise is 60 and the run is 10. So it's going to be 60 divided by 10, which is 6. Now let's look at the units. Well, my rise was in kilometers per hour and my run was in seconds. So my units are kilometers per hour per second. And when I look at that quantity, it's actually an acceleration. So I know the slope of a velocity time graph, so slope equals the acceleration. So we can summarize that now. We know that the slope of a speed versus time graph is equal to the acceleration. So anytime I give you one of these graphs and I say find the acceleration, you just say, oh, that's easy. It's just the slope is equal to the rise over the run. Now let's try another example. It says find the acceleration of the following. Well, what do I have here? I have a speed time graph, which means if I find the slope, that will actually give me the acceleration. So let's write it down. So acceleration is equal to the slope, which is equal to the rise divided by the run. In this case here, my rise is 10 and my run is 5. So I go 10 divided by 5, which gives me 2. When I look at my units, I have basically meters per second, because the 10 is in meters per second and the 5's in seconds. Meters per second is like saying meters per second squared. Now what I want to do is calculate the distance traveled from a speed time graph. So the question says find the distance traveled from the information given in the graph. Well, let's look at the information and write it down. What I notice is that the speed isn't changing. Over here it's 20, over here it's 20, over here it's 20, 20, 20, 20, all the way across. So I know my speed is constant and it is 20 meters per second. My total time is 5 seconds. I'm going to write down t equals 5 seconds. I'm looking for the distance. Well, I have a formula that uses these three variables, and that is v is equal to d over t. Now, I don't want to solve for v, I want d all by itself. So what I need to do is remove the t. The opposite of dividing by t would be to multiply by t. So I'm going to multiply both sides by t, the t's cancel out, and I now have d all alone. So I'm just going to write down d is equal to vt. I plug in my numbers. My v was 20, my t is 5, and that gives me 100 meters. Now when I look at the graph, there's another formula that looks just like this, okay, where I multiply this side, and that's area. So the area of a rectangle, because this graph kind of makes a rectangle with the x-axis, would simply just be the length times the width, 20 times 5. And that's exactly how we find distance when we look at these graphs. So the area under the line in a speed time graph equals the distance traveled during the time interval. So my distance is equal to the area. So let's try another example. So in this one here, here's a different graph. It says find the distance traveled, and I have a speed time graph. This time, this is a trapezoid, and I don't remember the formula for area of a trapezoid, but what I do remember is if I kind of drop this down, I can make two shapes that are easy formulas I remember. Area of a triangle plus area of a rectangle. So I'm going to call this area 1 and area 2. If I want the total area, all I have to do is find the area of the triangle and add it to the area of the rectangle. So we're going to do that. So I know my distance is equal to my area 1 plus my area 2. My first one's a triangle. Area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. Area of a rectangle is simply length times width. Now let's plug in some numbers. The base of the triangle is 2. The height is 20, and I'm going to divide that by 2. My rectangle, we have to be careful here. So the bottom, my length of the rectangle, look, it goes from 2 to 5. So it'll be 1, 2, 3. So it'll be 3 times my height, which is 20. I put some numbers in my calculator. 2 times 20 is 40, divided by 2 is 20. 3 times 20 is 60. 20 plus 60 is 80 meters. So if I'm given a shape that I don't know the area for, all I have to do is break it down into shapes that I do know the areas of. So I know a triangle and I know a rectangle. So just to review, when you find the slope of a speed versus time graph, that gives you your acceleration, and the area of a speed time graph gives you your distance traveled.